I'm Aaron Maté, sitting in for Jimmy. Here with me, Chapolin and Americans comedian Kurt Metzger. And we are joined now by Nick Cruse. He is co-host and co-founder of the revolutionary Blackout Network. Nick, welcome back to the Jimmy Dore Show.
Hey, what's poppin', my friends?
Good to see you. So here is the announcement from the Justice Department. U.S. citizens and Russian intelligence officers charged with conspiring to use U.S. citizens as illegal agents of the Russian government. Defendants sought to sow discord, spread pro-Russia propaganda, and interfere in elections within the U.S. And here's a headline about this from the Washington Post. Federal authorities charged 4 Americans Tuesday with roles in a malign campaign pushing pro-Kremlin propaganda in Florida and Missouri, expanding a case that charged a Russian operative with running illegal influence agents within the U.S. And one of the people charged is a man named Omali Yeshitela. He is 82 years old. He is the leader of a group called the African People's Socialist Party. They're a black leftist group. And what this indictment alleges is that they're essentially Russian agents. And this indictment is very long, and it goes through all these cases where members of the African People's Socialist Party spread what the indictment paints as pro-Kremlin propaganda. It's simply just criticism of U.S. foreign policy, especially in Ukraine, in fueling the proxy war in Ukraine, in blocking diplomacy, and in arming neo-Nazi groups like the Azov Battalion. So that's what this indictment is targeting these black leftists for. And here is the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, Omali Yeshitela, speaking about a raid that happened on his home in conjunction with this case.
Uhuru! As it has been said, my name is Omali Yeshitela. I'm chairman of the African People's Socialist Party and chairman of the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. On July 29th, at 5 o'clock in the morning, pre-dawn, an army of assault weapons toting, camouflage wearing military forces identifying themselves as the FBI attacked my home. They used flashbang grenades, armored vehicles. They threatened my life and threatened my wife. They used drones. This was in St. Louis, Missouri, in the most economically depressed sector of that city. At the same time, on the white side of St. Louis, they attacked our movement, Solidarity Movement, and they used battering rams also there, knocked down doors. They held people hostage, handcuffed at gunpoint, as they did me and my wife, whom they handcuffed and zip-tied in front of our homes. They declared that despite the fact that I have been involved in fighting this system for most of the 81 years that I have been alive, despite the fact that I have opposed every predatory war that the United States, which, by the way, is the strategic enemy of all of humanity, despite the fact that I have always done that they have declared that black people are so stupid that it takes Russians to tell us that we are oppressed. I have never known a moment of black freedom for my entire life. I have never read of a moment since the beginning of a colonial mode of production where black people have been free. And yet they're saying that we are agents of some foreign power.
Let me bring in Nick Cruse of the Revolutionary Blackout Network. Nick, what do you make of this case?
I don't know about you, Aaron, but to me, it looked like he's guilty because he's sowing some major discord right there.
Since when are you not supposed to sow discord? Like the entire media is based on that.
Yes, you would think so. Based on the charge, based on what they said, man, he's sowing discord. So I guess he has to go to prison. So in all seriousness, you warned about this, Aaron, and I was warning my friends about Russiagate. That was before I had a platform. Because to me, it was always obvious what the state planned to do with this power. This is not anything new. This is a long-term tradition. This is why I believe that the liberals and the Democratic establishment is extremely dangerous to Black lives, because how did they get the state power and the political capital to do this? They said, well, you have Trump supporters who are friendly with Russia, so we're going to use the state to crack down on them. And then after manufacturing consent and getting a political capital by saying they're going to go after white supremacists, domestic terrorists, or other criminals, they then take state power and crack down on workers, Black people, indigenous people. That is a long-term trend. I remember after January 6th, where all the liberals lost their mind. Many people in the Bernie left that I was a part of when I worked on the campaign, they excommunicated me because I was laughing and saying January 6th was a joke. And this was an obvious power grab by the Democratic Party. And guess what the Capitol Police did about literally 1 week later, after the Democratic Party gave them unprecedented spying powers? They used that to spy on indigenous people who was protesting Line 3. You had all these oil companies that wanted to drill on indigenous lands. So that's what they always do. They always take government power and they use it to go after the people who are the real threats. The socialists, the communists, the people that are challenging corporate power. And I don't know if you remember this, but all Black radicals, including MLK, was smeared as someone who attended communist training school. You had Malcolm X, who was smeared as a Fidel Castro Cuban communist sympathizer because he was willing to tell the truth about Cuba and the United States relationship with Cuba. So Black radicals being smeared as some sort of enemy boogeyman the state is not new, but it's still bone chilling to see that they are going this far with it.
And what do you make of the indictment basically trying to criminalize not just dissent, but just factual information? So, for example, this long indictment of these activists, it talks about how they said things like the U.S. is fueling a proxy war in Ukraine, is blocking diplomacy, that the U.S. is supporting a military that has neo-Nazis incorporated into its armed forces. These are all true things. And regardless whether they're true or not, it's not criminal to have a dissenting opinion. But basically, according to the message of this indictment is that, yeah, if you have a dissenting opinion on this, if you're vocal about it, you will get charged.
Yeah, I have nothing more to call these people other than fascists, because this is what this is. This is one of the key tenets of fascism, is crushing down on dissent. Now, they got to slow roll this, and they're going to go after the Huru Black Socialist movement because they are easy to go after. And I think they miscalculated, because I'm pleasantly surprised, Aaron, to see Glenn Beck and Tug Carlson speak about this. But their calculation was, if we suppress the free speech right, which this is, as you said, even if they was wrong about everything we're saying, even if they was agents of Russia, like, I don't understand how this is not covered in the First Amendment, because it is. So they went after the Black socialists because they know liberals hate them, because I don't know if you covered this, Max Blumenthal did a great job explaining this. They will run candidates in their elections. They're not a giant threat. They get like 2-3%, but that's all it takes to make the Democrats make them their number one enemy. So they decided to go after them, and with them knowing that the right wingers won't say anything about it because these are Black communist people, but people have, and I think that was a giant miscalculation. But the main point I cannot emphasize enough: we have temporary allowances in this country. We don't have a First Amendment, Second Amendment. All this stuff is a myth. If you guys think we have a Second Amendment, for example, why can't a cop? There was a story last week of them unloading bullets on someone, this Black person, because he had a gun on his balcony. So are we not allowed to have guns on our balcony? If a cop can shoot you simply because you have a gun on your own property, we don't have Second Amendments, the Second Amendment rights. If you cannot challenge and debunk the Pentagon on their war that they have been lying about, we don't have the First Amendment rights. And the Biden administration lost a Supreme Court battle, Aaron, to this extremely right-wing Federalist Society Supreme Court struck down Biden trying to give law enforcement the power to disarm people because they were charged with a crime, whether they are guilty or not. They were using this to disarm Black people in Baltimore and DC. They will arrest them, take their guns, charge them with a crime, whether they're relevant or not, take their guns. So this is a Fourth Amendment violation and a Second Amendment violation that the Supreme Court struck down. So this is the mindset and the mentality for the Biden administration and Democrats, that the only reason they can't do that is because of Republicans. How crazy is that? So it's just very chilling how deeply I hate this term, authoritarian, but deeply authoritarian this country has been. Because the obvious takeaway from the story is everything that they accuse Russia and China of doing in terms of cracking down on dissent, we do. That's why I generally don't even like the term, because they say other countries are authoritarian. Meanwhile, in the United States, they are law and order. You know what I mean? And
it's authoritative is the word they use here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in foreign countries, the U.S. spends tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, not just trying to sow discord, but to overthrow governments. And whenever one of those countries cracks down on U.S.-funded foreign agents, the U.S. cries foul. Here, you have some members of Black liberation movements being accused of taking, at most, thousands of dollars from some Russians for their speaking tours or for their events. And these people are now being accused of being unregistered Russian agents and facing prison time over it.
Yeah, so we had Amali on. Sabby did a great interview with Amali a few months ago. We share a lot of politics with Amali. If you follow our channel on Revolutionary Blackout, like our take on Ukraine is very similar to his. So how long before they go after us for sowing discord? There are a lot of topics that, as a smaller channel, we was terrified to talk about, because it's easier to just pull and suppress the voices of smaller channels, people that don't have massive amounts of support. So when I see stories like this, I wonder how long until it hit one of us. This is the beta test. These are the people that they believe they can get away with this, and they will be doubling down on this if they do. We see how this story play out, because I think they miscalculated, as I said before. I am surprised that I see some right-wingers speaking out against this, because I think the right wing need to do a better job on being principled on free speech, because there's many forms of free speech violations. Like if you look at Ron DeSantis in Florida, they crack down on BDS laws, protesting against BDS. That's a form of First Amendment. Protesting is a legitimate form of free speech. And when you have Ron DeSantis and the Republican Party limiting protests, how much where you can protest, the permits you need, that's a crackdown on free speech, whether you guys know it or not. So I am glad, I gotta be clear, I am glad I see right-wingers speaking on it. That's a good development. But we need to see a more principled take down the line on the First Amendment, on the Second Amendment, on the Fourth Amendment, because there's a massive authoritarian crackdown coming from both sides. But I don't want to undermine how insane the Biden administration is in particular, but both sides are guilty of this.
And in the next segment, we're going to talk more about how some conservative voices are talking about this case, against the African People's Socialist Party and other Black revolutionaries, but liberals are ignoring it.
We're telling jokes in Nashville, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, Baltimore, Chicago, Rosemont, San Diego, and more. Go to jimmydore.com to get a link for all those tickets. Plus, you can watch my new special, COVID Lies Are Funny.